Hey guys, it's Lotti again. I'm here in an online call with Buck from band The Toasters. Hi, first of all.
How you doing, mate? Live and
Fine.
direct from Texas.
Yeah, direct from Texas. You're living in Texas, right?
Yeah, I've been living here for 10 years, but I'm about to go somewhere else.
Ah,
I'm
okay,
going to go
okay.
to I'm going to Vietnam next.
I see. Because it's a little bit of the story of The Toasters. You make ska. You have a long
hmm
story, more than 40 years now. And I think we have to talk a little bit about the story. But first of all, can you tell me, how did you fall in love with ska back then when you were a teenager, probably?
Well, I was living in England at that time, and my elder brother was into skinhead reggae in the late 60s.
Hmm.
So we were listening to a lot of releases on the Trojan record label, for example. Early bands like Simmerip, Judge Dredd, people like this. But living in England in the 70s, I got really into the whole two-tone movement, which was, for me, was not just music. It was very socio-political movement, very important, actually. I think a lot more important than people in the USA really understand. I think Europeans appreciate it more. But that's really what got me into it hardcore. And so when I moved to New York City in 1980, and discovered no Ska-Szene at all here, I decided to make the Toasters, and the rest you know.
Yeah, sure. You have been the Englishman in New York. You inspired Sting and Police for the song.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. And as you mentioned, there has been no ska scene at all. I think punk and hardcore was for sure. It was a little bit,
Yeah, I
but
mean, there had been a couple of bands in New York City playing Sky music. One was called the Terrorists,
Mhm.
um, but they had finished playing by the time I arrived in 1980. But there was a pretty flourishing punk and hardcore scene. And for example, in the rehearsal studio we shared that with Murphy's Law and the Cro-Mags and a couple of other bands, for example. And our first show in New York City in 1982 was opening up for the Bad Brains.
Oh, cool.
So that's how that all started. And HR was in jail at the time, I think, and so it was the Bad Brains band playing a reggae set, which was
Ah,
pretty epic. Yeah.
okay.
For me, I
So
thought they were a better reggae band than hardcore band, but that's just my opinion.
I see. So probably this was good for you to be a ska band in front of a reggae band, more or less at that moment was more fitting.
Yeah, but also because we're on the Lower East Side and there are all so many bands playing around that area, Chromax, Murphy's Law, Sick of It All, so many great
Mhm.
bands in New York. And we toured quite a bit with Murphy's Law. So I think that's kind of where the Toasters' harder edge came from, a little bit. So there was a little bit of a crossover influence from hardcore and punk music for sure. And of course, we were playing once a month at CBGB, so we have that. We have that in the background also.
But wasn't it difficult to find people for ska music back then in New York because people didn't know
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
if they
yeah.
maybe knew.
I started the band just with people I was working with as, for something to do.
Ah,
And my roommate was playing piano, keyboards, and so I got guys. But as we started playing gigs, I discovered people in New York City who were also knew what Sky music is. So after a while, we built, we built the band, but it was a little difficult explaining the style to people who hadn't heard it before.
yes, yes. Yeah. And how did people react on the ska tunes back then in New York? Was it
Yeah,
difficult to
yeah,
get
they
them?
really liked it. I think people were open to that kind of music, and I think a lot of people ask me why didn't do I think that the whole two tone thing didn't take off in the States, and my theory on that is because the record music executives in the business in the US didn't understand the politics of it, and they also didn't understand how to market it because it was like black guys and white guys playing together in a band, which they weren't really used to, and so they didn't know who to sell it to. Um, And it was really surprising that bands like the Selector and the Specials and the Beat couldn't get more exposure in the States than they did. Whereas a band like UB40, for example, went really big because they knew how to market them.
It was more this classical reggae style somehow. People knew it
Yeah, I mean,
from Mali and stuff.
We had Island Records here, of course, who were pushing that. Um, but I was surprised that Island Records wouldn't really get behind the ska music thing more than they did. But we'll never know.
And did you have some other bands that followed you that said, okay, let's do like the Toasters did back then? Some
Uh,
friends that
yeah,
were.
I mean, we eventually got together quite a good ska scene in New York City. There's
Mhm.
some other really good bands, like Beat Brigade was one, New York Citizens was another, the Scene, the A Kings. So we did a compilation in 1986 called the New York Beat Hit and Run compilation, which was featuring a lot of the New York City ska bands. So Second Step was another big name. So it got really popular here in the late 80s. Um, and then, of course, we had what happened, like the ska boom of the 90s, where all kinds of bands who weren't ska bands at all were being marketed as ska bands. And that's what really wrecked a lot of it, in my opinion.
Why? Why do you think so?
Well, because I mean, there was bands like Goldfinger
Mhm.
who were being marketed as a ska band, but they didn't have a ska beat in the whole set. They had a guy playing a trumpet, so that doesn't make you
Okay,
a
yeah.
ska band, you know. So I think um, I think the marketing took it in the wrong direction, but also the whole ska punk explosion was something that people weren't that kind of came out of nowhere. Um, Bands like the Bosstones and what they were doing, which is great band, took it quite far. But
Mhm.
ska music in the 90s went in many different directions. Not all of them good, in my opinion.
I see, I know what you mean. So you were still more like a pure ska guy, having some punk influences and stuff, but it's the old school ska focus.
Yeah, we've depending on who's been in the band and who's been doing the writing, we've had more of a reggae influence. A couple of the records have got a lot more jazz influence on them. But at the end of the day, I'm just some two-tone street punk kid, you know.
Yeah, I see.
Well,
And
not a kid anymore, but that's what I was.
yeah, you're still a kid. As long as you do
Yeah,
music, you are somehow a kid, I think,
yeah.
keeping the child in you alive.
Hmm.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
great.
well, next year will be 46 years.
Yeah, you're almost as old as a band as I am as a person. I was born in 79, so short after my birth, you founded the band.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
but you're a child of that era then. 79 was a good year.
yeah, it
Great
was
year
good.
for music, you know.
Yeah, for sure. But I think I know at my birthday in Germany, charts number one was Boney M. So not
Mm.
sure if that's good or not, but it's a
Yeah,
fact.
yeah. I think you're past master. I often tell people like living in England in the late 70s was pretty incredible because after like the wasteland of like disco and all that kind of stuff and all the crap music we had in the 70s, I mean, you had you had all these different scenes coming up, like the punk scene
Mhm.
with all those bands, Sex Pistols and the Clash, whatever, the ska scene, and then you also had like the power pop scene with bands like Joe Jackson, Elvis Costello, guys like this, and then the whole the synth like electronic music scene, Gary Newman, Human League, so this, and then bands like Roxy Music just thrown in on the top. So what a great time for music in the late 70s in the UK.
Sure. It was like uh, don't know how to say, but really great and wide range. It was this post-punk, for example, how people call it. We have had so many new experimental bands and artists. Gary Newman, for example, he was really a pioneer in synth music.
Yeah, I went to see him. I went to university in York University in England in the 70s, and he came to the college to play a gig, and it was him. And opening up was the Human League. I thought, wow, what a great concert. But like very at that time, very different, very different stuff. And the next week I saw Elvis Costello. And the week after that I saw the Revillos. Well, now the Rosillos, but all in 3 weeks' time, bands like this. But also we had bands like Chili Willy and the Red Hot Peppers, like a big huge pub rock scene in England, Brinsley Schwartz, bands like this, Graham Parker. Fantastic, fantastic time to be a music fan.
Yeah, sure. Or like China Crisis, for example, great band. I had to talk to them
Yeah.
once. Yeah, really
Mhm.
cool guys. Yeah, great. And so your personal taste of music is really wide. You have from ska to punk to electronic music is what you like personally.
Yeah, well, I liked all of those things. I mean, I like music a lot, and I like indie music even more.
Mhm.
But there were a lot of interlocking threads in the music scenes in England in the 70s. I mean, you know, I would go see bands like Aswad as well, and a lot of those breakthrough uh, reggae bands, pop reggae bands who really took it really large. All this also going on at the same time. But I think a lot of the bands talk to each other, and people used to go to each other's concerts. You know, like
Mhm.
one night I go see a punk band, then I go see Eddie and the Hot Rods and Doctor Feelgood, and then something else. So many great bands.
Great. And when you go, for example, to a punk concert or to maybe a electronic concert, do you look at the stage and try to learn something of your colleagues, of the other artists for your music?
I don't know if I'd learn anything from this point, but I enjoy it. But I mean, there's good bands and there's bad bands, aren't there? So I
Yeah.
think I don't really like a lot of the new melodic punk bands because it's pretty derivative there. And why do you want to sound the same as everybody else? I'd rather go see a band doing something new, like Einstürzen der Neubauten or something like this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Blixer Bargeld was pioneer in this band. Yeah.
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 And Kraftwerk also. What a fantastic band. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think Kraftwerk have been inspiring the whole electronic music. Without them,
Yeah, for
it wouldn't be
yeah, for
there.
sure.
Not like it is nowadays, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They've been so important, yes. Yeah, Blixer Bargeld, I once had the chance to have an interview with him as well. It was really cool. He's a
Oh,
really
really?
nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the
And
whole the whole stage show was like a Fritz Lang movie,
yeah, sure.
almost.
Yeah, it's
I watched them, thought, wow, that they should have been the backing track for all those Fritz Lang metronome and all those movies back in the day.
yeah, totally know what you mean. Yeah, it's it's
Yeah,
it's special. You can't describe it to
yeah.
someone who has never seen it, for sure.
Hmm.
And you mentioned in the 90s the ska movement was going wrong direction somehow. Have you ever had a moment where you said, "Okay, I'll quit. I don't want to do this anymore," yourself?
Well, I think I had a bit of a moment like that when I closed up the record label, Moon Records, in the late in 2000. We closed that,
Mhm.
but I think at that point there had been too much major label interest in the ska scene, and they distorted it from where um, where I felt I wanted to go with it. Because back in the day, it's like um, we'd always kind of been a little bit of control of our own destiny in the sense when we're all still indie bands. But as soon as so much money went into the business, I think people started playing the music for the wrong reasons, and bands being marketed as ska bands, like who weren't, like No Doubt, really good band but not a ska band, Goldfinger, not a ska band.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of it lost direction. And of course, after Napster and the file sharing thing, it was impossible to have an indie label anymore, or even any indie distribution. So that was one time where I thought I would just like hang my hat up, but it didn't take me very long to get back on the road.
And what kept you going? What was the reason that you said, "Okay, I'll go on"?
Well, I thought, well, if the music business is going to be irrevocably changed in ways, number one, that I can't
Mhm.
influence, and number two, I can't do anything about that, then I should do something else. And so what I decided to do um, was, instead of spending a lot of money recording records and this kind of thing, I just bought a lot of air tickets and took the band around the world doing world tours to have like a global touring footprint. And I think that's really what helped the band survive and get out to a lot of places where nobody had ever been before. You know?
For example, what have been really cool countries and destinations where you went with the band?
Well, I mean, I used to go to East Germany, for example, which now doesn't really exist anymore, except as
Hmm.
a line on the map. We were going behind the Iron Curtain into, you know, Czechoslovakia at that point, and down into the Balkans when it's still under Tito. But then we also went to Russia, we went to Japan, we went to China, we went to South America, all over the place. And I think having that global footprint really got the band a lot of notoriety. And so now we just tour.
Yeah, sure. And you have fans all over the world till today,
Yeah,
so you can tour all over the world. I think this is important nowadays because, as you mentioned, you can't sell that much records anymore, if any. So, but touring and getting on and meeting the people, selling some merch, I think this is the best way.
yeah. I think that's the new business model that works for bands. But it's kind of, you know, obviously it's very difficult for new bands because how do they get the promotion that's going to enable them to do that? So I think we have a climate that's harder than ever for startup bands, but I mean they can use the internet, which is fine. But after a while, unless you can translate all that promotion into the musicians making some money in order to be able to pay their bills and continue, then there's the trick right there.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what
Also,
that's what you have to.
young bands have the opportunity to get heard really fast because streaming and YouTube and stuff gives them the opportunity, but you have to transfer it, as you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's always been the case. I mean, I saw that a lot in bands coming up, and I call it the goodwill factor, where there's a certain amount of time that new and developing bands have before they realize that they're not making any money, and that's somewhere between 2 and 5 years, depending on how much they're touring. They realize that the record label's making money, the management is making money, the agency is making money, the club owners are making money, but the band is not making money. And there's only a certain amount of uh, distance that you can go with that kind of goodwill before the band either gets a payday, so it makes them want to continue or be able to continue, or the band has to break up.
Or just keep it as a hobby, playing from time to
Yeah.
time, but not touring that much for sure.
Well, I see a lot more people doing that now. A lot of even bigger bands who only play on the weekends.
Yeah, sure.
Bands don't do a 4 week club tour anymore.
Yeah, especially after the pandemic, because I know really big bands here in Germany that have lost everything during the pandemic, and then after that got to back to their old jobs and only
Yeah,
playing several weekends or festivals or stuff because it's not affordable anymore.
yeah, yeah. There's that, and nobody wants to quit their day job at the moment, which is a shame. You know, which
Yeah,
is a shame, but that's what it is. And you can't crowdfund everything.
no, not really. There are not enough people to fund everything for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned earlier in this talk the reasons to start making ska music, for example, because it was political and stuff like this. So is this still something really important to you, that you have some messages that you want to transfer to the people?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the best messages out of the ska scene in general and two tone in particular was the racial unity message.
Mm,
Number one, the working class message. Don't let the bastards grind you down, which is a Toasters tune.
yeah,
That kind of that kind of ethic. The working class music, street music. Um, and at the time, the backdrop in England in the late 70s was Margaret Thatcher and the National Front. Like you have these AFD goons now.
yeah,
Same kind of thing. Same kind of thing going on in England. These things keep coming round. It's a cycle. And so through the music, and the message of the music, it was able to have a platform where people could rally behind that flag and make a movement against like anti-fascist movement, basically, which was very important then, and I think it's even more important now
No, for sure. And
because
nowadays,
we're going back to the same place, in
yeah,
my opinion.
and it's one thing I could say hate is when you look, for example, online, people commenting and saying, "Hey, stop politics and music. Music is all about having fun and stuff." It was always art and music was always about politics as well, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah. I mean, people who are saying that are obviously the people who um, are obviously the people who are getting the message that we don't like them, and so they want to participate in the music without being part of the movement, and so those are exactly the people that we need to talk to,
Yeah, totally.
people who say that
Did you?
because it hasn't, it's like since when did ska music become like frat boy music? When did that happen? It didn't. Yeah, and maybe it did a bit with bands like Real Big Fish and a lot of this just nonsense ska. Um, that Aquabats, bands like this, it's like, is that really what kind of message is this? I think I take the music a lot more seriously. Um, and bands like Burning Spear and Black Uhuru, bands like this, you know, we need more bands with those types of messages, like the Selector, like
Totally,
Pauline Black, people like this.
totally agree. Sure. And when you go on tour, for example, you come. The reason why we talk is you are touring now, and you come to Germany. Do you sometimes meet people saying to you face to face, "Stop the politics"? Do you have discussions, or is it that the people at your shows all know where they are going?
Yeah, and not so much in Germany. In the US at the beginning, there was a lot of that. We had one show in Florida, in Gainesville, Florida, I want to say in about 1992, 1993. And we were playing a show there, and the the KKK was having their annual convention there. And so we had a show, and there was a big riot, and at that time, we had some sharp skins who were our roadies. And there was a bunch of like Nazi skinheads who wanted to come into the show, and they wouldn't let them come in. And so I went out to talk to these guys, and they had like the swastika armbands, the whole 9 yards. And I said, how do you reconcile that if this is your beliefs and this is what you're wearing? You want to pay $10 to come and watch the black guy sing and the black guy play trumpet. How do you make that jive? And so the guy goes, oh well, we've been fans for a long time. And we're not racist. We're only bigots. I said,
Okay.
okay, well, take their money, let them in. But the bouncers were these huge black guys. I said, if these guys make any trouble, you guys know what to do. And they're like, right on. But they came in, stood down the front, sang the songs, had a beer, and went home. So maybe there is a way to get through to these people,
Yeah.
you know?
This is cool, yeah, because this is what I always say. For sure, there are some people you can't talk to. They are so uh, narrow-minded that you can't talk to
Mm.
them, and they will stay at their beliefs. But we have to talk to these people because if we don't, we can't change anything. It will always be two
Yeah,
fronts.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Because-
I mean, you're never going to get through to them unless you try to get through to them.
yeah,
And just ignoring them doesn't mean they're going to go away, you know. So it's like sticking your head in the sand might work for a fucking ostrich, but it doesn't work with people like this.
and many people I know from my youth, for example, there have been people being a left-wing punk, then going to the right-wing skins because some people with dark color skin have beaten them up, and then later on, okay, this was stupid, I'm left again. So sometimes it's even a way of finding yourself and finding your beliefs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's also a lot of people. A lot of people are influenced by the wrong things, and you can do yourself a lot of damage by hanging out with the wrong people because you get stuff in your head that maybe you don't really believe, and you're just doing it because other people are doing it. You know, but people are quite gullible, essentially.
Totally, for sure. Great. I know we have to talk about the tour here in Germany. It's Germany and I think one date in Austria, for example. It's
Hmm.
in, I've written it down, September it starts. September and then to October. You're here in our region. So what do you like most about being here? Is there a difference in the mind, for example, of the people?
Yeah, well, we've been playing in Germany since I think our first tour in Germany was in 1989, and we played 4 shows there, which were great. And we've been coming back to Germany every year since. Some years 2 times, some years 3 times. Um, and I used to live in Germany when I was a kid.
Okay.
My dad was my dad was war Mitglieder von den britischen Besatzungsarmee in den 60er Jahre. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So I lived in Mönchengladbach.
Ah, it's close to me, or close to us.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm in Duisburg, and my girlfriend comes from Viersen, for example.
Okay,
So
yeah.
you
In
maybe know
Europa,
it's
in
close to
Europa.
Mönchengladbach.
Yeah, well, the Ruhrpott was a British area of patrol. But my father was in the barracks in Mönchengladbach, in Rheindahlen, and
I
in
know.
Gütersloh. So all around that area. So I actually lived in Germany before you were born, you see. Makes me
Uh,
more German than you.
Probably, yes. But my girlfriend, she, as I mentioned, she was living in Viersen. She was born in Viersen, and she had lots of
Yeah.
friends from the English girls and people living there, being there stationed, because she went there. She wanted to know more about Boy George back then. So
Oh
and
yeah.
so she went to see some BBC stuff, and so just just met some people, and this is why we still have some friends in England where we can visit and stuff. Yeah. Funny.
Yeah. But I mean Germany's always been a great supporter of the ska scene, even more so than England. I think England kind of lost its way a bit in the 90s, but the ska scene in England is coming back quite strong now with some really good bands. Have you seen these guys, Death of Guitar Pop? Have you
No,
seen them?
not yet.
You should look them up. That's a really good band. And there's another band called the Skints, who kind of a little bit crossover. But the Jackass Skank's also a great band. So there's a lot of good bands in England again now, which is good. So we have a 3 week tour in England before we come over to Germany on that same tour, and then we're going to Poland for a week, which is also good.
I think as I've never been in Poland to a concert or stuff, but all bands going there tell me they are really crazy there in Poland,
Oh yeah,
Eastern Europe in general, Poland, Czech Republic and stuff is they still love live music and party a lot.
yeah, yeah, and they drink a lot of vodka. So with that mix, it's But I mean,
So,
I like the Polish people because they have a good time, you know.
uh, so
But I mean, it's a pretty extensive tour. But I mean, we must have played thousands of shows in Germany at this point.
okay.
You know.
So you probably have made some friends here in Germany as well that you're looking forward to meet again.
Yeah, yeah, a lot, and we've had the same booking agent. This guy Florian Bolendorf Birdie. He used to work with Ozzy back in the day, but I've been working with him as my booking agent now for like 25 years. So that's kind of a quite a good relationship. But yeah, I know a lot of guys in Germany at this point.
I've seen, for example, you're playing in Ratinger Hof in Düsseldorf.
Yeah,
It's really cool venue. Maybe I'll come if I find time, but probably would love to
yeah.
see you live.
Let
Yeah,
me know. We can put you on the guest list so we can have a beer. How's that?
yeah, for sure.
Some Flüssigbrot.
Flüssigbrot, yes.
Yeah.
Uh, then I have to ask, if you drink German beer, do you drink Pils or Alt?
If what?
You, there's in Germany you have different styles of beer. You have Pils, like Pilsner, like Budweiser, for example. I think it's also
Mhm.
Pils.
Oh yeah.
And in Düsseldorf, for example, you have this Alt beer. Maybe you know this dark beer. It's dark and
Yeah,
taste is
I've had
different.
that. I like pills a lot, but I also like Rauchbier that they have in Bavaria. Have you had that? The smoked beer
Yeah, 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 it's great.
in
Yeah.
in Bamberg they had it. But I mean, German beer is pretty good, I got to say. But my favorite is My favorite is haben fish. What's this one? The one with Flensburger. I like that.
With these pong, plop.
Yeah, this one. And Jever also. I think the North German beers are quite bitter, which I like.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, I've definitely
not,
drunk a few beers.
yes. In northern Germany, you have these bitter beer, and the more south you go, it's like having Weizen
Hmm.
beer, for example, in Bavaria stuff. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And but is it? I really have to ask because you're doing this for a long time. For sure, when you have been young, you didn't think about this. But nowadays, do you drink, for example, before a show or only after a show or a little bit? How do you do it to stay fit, simply on tour?
Well, I mean, I don't know how fit I am at this point. I'm obviously fit enough to do a show. I definitely don't drink as much as I used to. But I mean, it's easy to drink German beer. It's just stay away from the schnapps and you'll be all right.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, when I was young punk, I drank schnapps a lot, and I had lots of Filmriss. You know Filmriss?
What's
Blackout.
that? Oh
Filmriss
yeah.
is a German word for blackout. This
Oh
was
yeah.
totally
Oh,
normal
okay.
when I was young. Nowadays, I drink beer, maybe some wine sometimes, but not a lot more beer. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
totally.
Well, my doctor tells me I'm not supposed to do it, but I just pretend I don't hear him.
This, yeah, getting older, you can say what? No, say again.
Yeah, selective hearing. Well, I'm 70 now, so
70.
it's kind of it's a little harder to keep going with the same momentum of when I was 25. But you just have to you just learn what you can do and what you can't do.
But to be honest, 70 I wouldn't have said. Maybe 50, 60 was what I thought. So
Oh, well, good. Yeah, I like you. You're obviously a very intelligent guy.
I get a second beer when I come. Great. Cool. Great. And you mentioned tomorrow the tour starts, or you're going on tour tomorrow. So where does it start? I didn't look up the dates now. Where
Well,
are
we
you
just
going?
we just have a few dates. We're starting in Texas and we're playing in Houston, New Orleans, and then there's a big festival in Orlando, Florida, called Hurricane Fest. So there'll be about 30 or 40 bands, and then we'll play one show and come back. And then the next tour isn't going to be until we do the England dates in August and September, and that tour will be 3 months.
I see. So summer is off. Summer is no tour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm moving. I'm going to go to Spain for a month. A friend of mine's getting married, so we're going to go there and hang out. My wife just quit her job, so we're going to do a little bit of traveling. Plus, my daughter lives in Germany at the moment. He's in Wiesbaden for the next 3 years. He's married to a squatty, and my other daughter is in Scotland, so I'll go to Glasgow for a couple of weeks and hang out.
So just having some private tour, you can say.
Yeah,
Private
yeah,
touring. Yeah,
yeah.
great. But this, for example, brings me. I know because when you tour as a band, often you can't see a lot of the cities, of the things around because you have your timetables. Um, which destinations do you love when you travel private?
As I'm going through this, I definitely keep a mental note of places I want to go back to
Mhm.
and hang out. Um, and Salzburg is up on that list. I really like that town. Um, but I like going down to Bavaria quite a lot, um, and Holland, as a matter of fact. So as you're going through, you're right. You don't really have a lot of chances to go do a lot of touristy stuff when you're on tour. But I have a lot of places that in my mind that I want to go back and hang out.
And when you do this, are you more the guy just relaxing, having a beer there, or do you really do sightseeing and like a tourist? Is it?
No, I don't really like being a tourist. I just go hang out. Most times there's somebody there I know, so I just go hang out with them and be more of a be more of a guest than a tourist. I think that's a better way. I think that's a better way to be.
Totally understand what you mean. Be with good people, have a beer
Yeah,
or something like this,
yeah,
or schnapps.
yeah, have a schnapps or shoot the shit. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have to go on stage, Schnaps is always okay. Yeah, great. I think I'm really looking forward to you coming here and touring because I never seen you live, so
Oh,
Düsseldorf
really?
will be a good opportunity.
Hmm.
When you go on a bigger tour like this, like going to England and then Germany and Austria and Poland and stuff, do you have to prepare a lot nowadays? Is it that you have to rehearse a lot, or is it you have done this for almost 50 years, 46
Nah,
years now?
we don't need to rehearse. I just send the guys a list of tunes. It's not always the same guys. Sometimes people aren't available. So I've learned over the years, it's like I just have several people who can play each instrument. So if I have a tour, I put it on the Google Sheets and say here's the dates, who's available to do it. So it's like Mission Impossible, where I go through and I select the team for the next Ska mission. But at the moment, I'm playing. I have one German guy, two Dutch guys, and a French guy on the crew.
Okay.
So that's the European band. I don't really bring American musicians so much now because the airfares are so expensive.
Yeah, sure.
Um, if I bought a whole band from the States, I would be maybe $10,000 in the hole before I even play a note, you know. So I'd rather take that money and hire the best European guys I could find and pay the musicians some money. This is new concept I have to actually make sure musicians get paid.
Yeah, that's totally great because I think, as I mentioned, it's too expensive nowadays. No, I even know bands from Germany, for example, going to the US. They are normally 4 or 5 people and then reducing to 3 and getting some people there because you can't afford it otherwise.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you spend all the money on airfares, and so I have guitars all over the world too because it's too expensive to bring them on the plane now. So I
Okay.
have one in Germany, one in England, one in Spain, one in Slovenia, one in Moscow. So
So
that way,
friends have a look on them, and when you come, you say, okay, now I need it.
yeah, that's right. I actually give them to my friends and say, you can have this guitar, but whenever I'm in XYZ country, you have to lend it back to me so I can play on it.
Okay,
So
good. But I have to ask, then are those all the same models, or do you use different guitars in different countries somehow with different sounds a
well,
little bit?
they're mostly Fenders, but these days I work with a great guitar company in the USA called Reverend,
Mhm.
and they make a Telecaster clone called the East Sider, and that's what I pay. I have about eight of those, but they're all in different parts of the world, and it's good because the airlines either they break them or they lose them, you know.
Mhm.
So I still have one that was lost last year that they still haven't paid me for. So that's just relieves that stress.
Mm. This is really, really smart. Never heard this of other musicians, but I do lots of interviews, so I can tell people, at least those who tour a lot all over the world, do it like that because it's cool.
The easier it is, the more I feel like doing it. The
Yeah.
harder it is, the less I feel like doing it.
Totally understand. That's great. But we'll come to an end now slowly because I have to write down my article afterwards somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
But I have to ask because if I didn't oversee something, there's a lot. Long time did nothing come out. No new releases have been there. So what's
Yeah.
coming? Do you write some new material, or is it that you say, okay, we have enough, never again?
And I write a new song here and there, but I found out that when we play places and I don't play the greatest hits, people get mad. Say, well, why didn't you play this? I said, well, we wrote this new tune, and people are like, well, we didn't want to listen to that. We wanted to listen to East Side Beat, or we wanted to listen to The Weekend in LA. So I think you have to be careful about not putting out too much material to people these days because they want you to play all the songs they like. And so if they're paying the money, then that's what they should get. Yeah.
For sure. But for you and yourself, you write some songs and sometimes try them out on stage.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But it's slowly and surely we put one in here and there. When people don't notice, we play them.
Okay. And maybe one day there will be another album or never?
Yeah, maybe. Like I said, I'm not in a hurry to spend a lot of money making a record because it's impossible to make that money back. I mean, I could go in a studio and spend $20,000 to make a record, but am I ever going to get that money back from selling records? And no, I'm not. So I think it's better to have more of a 60s singles driven approach now, where you make a single, which I think is better because it makes people write better songs. If every song is a single, then people have to write better tunes. So I'm all about that.
That's sure. You can't do any fillers because if you put out a filler, bad song, people say, okay, they are gone. It's over.
Yeah, there's that, and because now we're not in the age of album orientated rock anymore.
I
It's all
see.
back to a singles driven. It's all back to like a '60s type singles driven model. So I think it's more incumbent on people to write one good tune rather than 10 so ones.
Yeah, totally. And the algorithms of the streaming platforms, for example, they love it
Yeah.
having a song after a song. Hello, my cat is coming.
Oh yeah.
Wait,
Must be dinner
yeah,
time.
yeah. I think she wants to have some food. Huh? Wanna have some food? Luna? No. She doesn't talk to me anymore. Great.
Yeah.
And back to you. So, yeah, I think we have a very important topic. Do you have some message to the people outside before we quit? Some greetings or stuff like this?
Yeah, I can say, come to the show and say hello. We'll have a beer. But it's important to still go see bands live and support them at the merch table, because that's how they survive. That's how they pay for the benzene and the bus rental. But I think just encourage people to, go see bands live because that's really what the music is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Nothing to add from my side. So thanks for the great talk.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. I appreciate we did it.
Yeah,
I'll tell Mike Matt Butcher was a good idea.
great. Give him some kisses from me. No,
Yeah, I will.
I'll just kidding. Great. And
Thanks.
people outside, thanks for watching. The Toasters, great band. Buck, great guy. Check them out. You probably know, but if not, check them out. And I say bye bye. Cheers.
See you, man.